This episode is sponsored by Transcend, a veteran-owned and operated performance optimization company that I introduced recently as a sponsor on this show. Well, since then, I have actually been using my products and I've had incredible success. There was initial blood work that was extremely detailed, and based on that, they offered supplementation. So I began taking DHEA, BPC 157 for inflammation, based on the fact that I've been a stuntman, a martial artist, and a firefighter my whole life. Lots of aches and pains. Dihexa to help cognition after multiple punches to the head and shift work, and peptides. 4 months later, they did a detailed blood work again, and I was actually able to taper off 2 of the peptides because my body had responded so well to just one of them that it was optimized at that point. So I cannot speak highly enough of the immense range of supplementation that they offer, whether it's male health, female health, peptides to boost your own testosterone, which I would argue is needed by a lot of the fire service, or whether it's exogenous testosterone needed, especially after TBIs or advanced age. Now, as I mentioned before, the other side of this company is an altruistic arm called the Transcend Foundation, which is putting veterans and first responders through some of their protocols free of charge. Now, Transcend are also offering you, the audience, 10% off their protocols. And you can find that on jamesgearing.com under the Products tab. And if you want to hear more about Transcend and their story, listen to episode 808 with the founder, Ernie Colling, or go to transcendcompany.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name is James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show researcher turned firefighter Jenny Grima. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from her journey through education, Alzheimer's research, her path into the fire service, working with unseen associates, mental health, toxic culture, surfing, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of well over 1,100 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Jenny Grima. Enjoy. Well, Jenny, I want to start by saying 2 things. Firstly, thank you to Aaron Heller, because I think that was the one that specifically put us together, even though I think we'd actually, interacted on social media before. And secondly, I think we both were part of Walt Lewis's training a few years ago in the Orlando Fire Conference. So thank you to him as well. And then most importantly, I want to welcome you to the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So where on planet Earth are we finding you this afternoon?
So I live in Fort Pierce, Florida, which is, for those who are not from Florida or don't know the area, it's south of Orlando, north of Palm Beach on the East Coast.
How is Fort Pierce? Because my wife spent the last 4 years in med school down in Davie, so Broward County.
Okay.
And one of the plans that we had was to move to Fort Pierce, which was kind of like a halfway point. So I'd still be up in, the Ocala area when I needed to be, and then she could go down south. But we ended up just saying that 300 miles was a better idea as a commute. So talk to me about Fort Pierce.
I absolutely love Fort Pierce. I moved here in 2009 from South Florida, and it is where I set up my life. It's by the beach. I live very close to the beach. I can walk across the street to the beach. It was my dream to make that happen. I surf, so it makes it really nice. But it's a growing and developing city. The county is Saint Lucie County, which encompasses Port St. Lucie, and between Fort Pierce and Port St. Lucie, it is booming right now. So everyone's starting to move here. But I absolutely love Fort Pierce. it was a nice little kind of a small town feel compared to growing up in South Florida. And it's surrounded by water, which I love. We have the Indian River Lagoon, the ocean. You get a little bit of country out west while you get the beach going east. We have a cute little downtown. It's small enough where you can still know a lot of people in town, although so many people are moving in. It's definitely getting to be where you don't know every local when you go to the restaurants anymore. So, but I love it.
That's what's interesting. I have the same here in Ocala. Beautiful, beautiful place. But obviously a lot of people are moving here from all over the country as well, which is great. Apart from the fact that I'm seeing all these apartment complexes and hotels and all these other things being built, but for example, local county fire department is saying they still don't have any money to hire extra people. So as a Florida resident that sees construction everywhere, east, north,
Right.
south, east, west, north, I question that whole thing where we're still told there's not the budget when in our state specifically, it is blowing up with construction.
It is. It's definitely something that I think a lot of fire departments are going to be having a hard time keeping up with as far as hiring and building firehouses, just because it's accelerated so quickly. So our small town is turning into a larger city very quickly, I think. So
yeah,
I definitely think a lot of fire departments are going to have to keep up.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned South Florida. So start at the very beginning of your timeline. Tell me where you were born and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
Okay, so I was actually born in Hammersmith in London.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I moved to the States when I was 4 with my parents. We moved to Miami. I have an older brother. He's about 1.5 years older than me. And so my parents got a divorce when I was younger, and I was raised by a single mom. So we lived in Miami Lakes area for a long time, till I was about in 9th grade, and then moved to a different part of South Florida. Eventually moved to Boca. I went to 3 different high schools. Ended up finishing high school in Boca Raton in Palm Beach County. And then and went to FAU there. So I did my undergrad at FAU. I got a job offer in 2009 after I got my degree doing research up here in Fort Pierce, which is why I moved up here. And I finished my master's degree through FAU, and that's how I ended up in Fort Pierce, 2009.
Well, let's go back to Hammersmith. Were either parents? This is how these interviews go. Was either parent British?
My dad is British, and his mom as well.
Okay. And was this one of the family dynamics where once the parent left, you weren't able to see them again, or were you able to still stay in touch?
My father and I have stayed in touch here and there, but we don't really communicate any longer. So
okay. Well, the reason I asked that, I'm not trying to pry too much, it's just it's amazing how so many of us in uniform, when you look at early life, there's nearly always struggles. And that can be a very positive thing. But I think, that draws you into uniform a lot of times because, for whatever reason, whether it's a sense of abandonment, not feeling good enough, and then you couple in the positive things, which are I want to help people. I don't want other people to feel this pain. So many of us have these kind of early life stories. So that's, what's interesting is more often than not, I would say 90+% of people, when you start talking about early life, there are a lot of these significant traumas, perceived traumas at least, that I think more often than not forge a person to be the right kind of human for a first responder profession.
I definitely think early life affects pretty much everything you do in your adult life. So I could definitely see the relation. I was very fortunate. I have a very strong mother who really, she was strict and tough when I was younger, for sure. But she set quite an example. I mean, there wasn't anything that we were ever lacking. She would make it happen. And she taught us to work hard, to go after what we wanted. And, I'm very fortunate. I have such a great mother. So She was a very good role model.
What's the geographical background of your last name? Because it's quite interesting.
It's actually Maltese. So my grandfather, my dad's father, my pappy, he's from Malta, which is, for a lot of people who don't know where that is, it's a little island off the boot of Italy. I say it's Italian, but Malta was basically invaded multiple times. It's got very deep water, so very easy to invade with large ships. So it did ended up getting its own independence eventually, but yeah, it's this small island. I think it's about 17 miles long. And so my grandfather's from there. It's where we get our Maltese cross, for people who don't know.
That's very
and the
cool.
Knights of Malta.
That's my bloodline crest that you're using in the fire service.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there was a lot of things that ended up tying me to the fire service later on, so.
Absolutely. Well, what about profession? What was your mom doing as far as her career?
Well, my parents were both technically missionaries for a church for a while. And then when we moved to the States, my mom became a teacher. She taught special needs kids. And then now she's been for, I don't even know how many years she's been doing it. She's what's called a support coordinator, where she basically coordinates support for special needs kids and adults, making sure they're getting proper treatment, care, if they can work a job, to make sure they're, basically all their needs are met. So she's been doing that for a while now, probably almost 30 years. So.
Have you, and this is I'm not sure if you would have had this conversation, but have you had the conversation as far as the metamorphosis of the way the special needs community are perceived? Because as we stand here now, like I've had Nick Nikic on the show, who's a young man with Down syndrome who did the Hawaiian triathlon. We've got all these adaptive athletes. We've got people with cerebral palsy just crushing marathons, and it's so beautiful to see. And I feel like most people are absolutely, behind a lot of that community. Whereas if you look at our history, the same kind of individuals were institutionalized and kept away from society.
Right. Well, I mean, just from my mom working, I haven't personally spent as much time with a lot of her patients, but she's got some very incredible people who she goes to see and that she works with. And yeah, I guess the mindset has shifted a lot on I think everything between, special needs, mental health, everything has kind of been shifted to understand a different perspective versus just institutionalizing people. So, a lot of things can be explained chemically, like with mental health and things like that, versus, before they would just assume they weren't well institutionalized and give them a lobotomy. So who knows? It's just, there's been a lot of changes, I'd say, for sure.
What about Miami Lakes? I was a Hialeah firefighter. It's my very first department, which I think is butted up against you. So talk to me about the Miami Lakes area as far as your upbringing then.
So I went to Miami Lakes Elementary and Miami Lakes Middle. It was a very diverse community. I was more of the minority there. And it was great. I played softball in one of the local parks there. But I guess it was just, I don't know what I consider a normal upbringing. Hang out with the neighborhood kids, play home run derby, and get in trouble. My mom would whistle whenever it was time to come back home, and you can hear it from the whole neighborhood. But Miami Lakes was great. We had our moments. Our house got robbed. Our car got stolen 3 times. So me and my brother got robbed walking home from school. So it had its difficulties, but eventually we ended up moving to Pinecrest area, South Florida, in the middle of my 9th grade year. And it was definitely culture shock after being in Miami Lakes for so long. Me and my brother were like not used to being around not as much diversity to say, and on top of it, it was just, people had lots of money and it was just strange. It was like a whole different environment. It was culture shock. But yeah, I mean, Miami Lakes, I didn't know any different from what it was, just a normal upbringing for me. But yes, there was a lot of, burglary and different things over there.
See, when I was in Hialeah, it had this reputation of being dangerous, but what I found mostly is it was just so densely populated. I mean, every house that used to have a yard had another house on it, and there were efficiencies. And, so as a
Yes.
firefighter, you think about doing a primary search and there might be 2 or 3 rooms that you have no idea are even there. And then everything's got bars on. But I just felt it was more poverty and desperation. It wasn't that they were, bad people. Like in Anaheim, California, I saw full on, Hispanic gangs murdering each other, constantly. So there was a lot more violence there than I saw in Hialeah, but it was just so many people. And then a lot of them were just so below the poverty line.
Well, I mean, we had our struggles growing up. There was a time period where we were going through difficulty and we ended up sharing a 2-bedroom apartment with another family. So me, my mom, and my brother, slept on a mattress on the floor in one bedroom. And then this other woman and her 2 boys were in the other bedroom. It was just, part of life back then. But yeah, I mean, it was a little bit, that was pretty common, I would say.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you mentioned about playing softball in middle school. What other sports did you play as you progressed through high school?
Well, I played softball and baseball when I was younger. And then I was on the golf team for a very short amount of time. I hated golf. I had a natural swing. It was like a thing. Everybody was getting into golf. And my mom, since she was a single mom, she would drop my brother off to go play golf for golf lessons. And I'm like hitting balls at the driving range one day, and his coach was watching me and I didn't know it. And he's like, "How long have you been golfing for?" And I was like, "I don't know, about 5 minutes." And he's like, "No, how long have you been golfing?" I'm like, 5 minutes. And he's like, "You have a natural swing." I was like, "Don't tell my mom." Of course, he told my mom. So I ended up having to play golf. My mom was very, she wanted us to play sports and be the best at everything. So anyway, golf became the next thing for a while, but I actually hated it when I was younger. So
what was it you hated about it?
I was just really active. I wanted to run and jump around, and golf, it was just, I didn't like all eyes on me. It was really quiet. You're lugging around this bag. I don't know. I was more into like team sports. But growing up in like where I was in Miami Lakes, I was a really good softball player there. But then when I moved to Pinecrest, where it was like a little bit more affluent, everyone had like batting cages in their backyards and all kinds of stuff. And I was like the worst one on the team, and I ended up quitting. So it just completely changed the dynamic. I didn't have the same skills or training as a lot of people there. But I didn't play like a ton of sports in high school. The most fit I ever got was when I decided to be a firefighter. It completely changed my life. So,
well, speaking of that, because I know you got into that a little bit later, you touched on your education. Talk to me about what you were dreaming of becoming when you were in high school.
I wanted to be a doctor when I was in high school. By the time I got to college, I wasn't really sure. I didn't have enough confidence, I guess, I went to 3 high schools, and I was kind of like over school. And so when I started at FAU, I was a photography major. I switched majors quite a few times. I was photography. I went into like undecided. I did psychology. I switched it to what did I switch it to? Well, anyway, I switched it a bunch of times. Finally, when I got a D in photography and I got an A in a biology class that I didn't even go to and barely studied for, I decided maybe I should switch. So I went ahead and was like a few years in, became pre-med. So it took me 6 years to get my bachelor's because I just didn't know what I was doing, and I changed degrees so many times.
What happened to that path? Because I saw on LinkedIn, I get this right. My printer's not working properly. You were invertebrate cell culturist. So that doesn't sound like a
Yes.
doctor. So talk to me about what
No,
happened
it's
there.
not. So basically, yes, I became an invertebrate cell culturist for a while. I forgot it says that on LinkedIn. I never go on there. But basically, the day so my overall GPA wasn't that great from all the undecidedness in my undergrad studies. So I went ahead and decided I was going to get a master's degree. My plan was to do a master's non-thesis, study for the MCAT, boost my GPA, and go to med school. So the day after I graduated, the FAU has a satellite campus up here in Fort Pierce at Harbor Branch. It's a marine biology institute. And the day after I graduated, we came up here to visit my brother and see where he was living. And we ended up meeting. I checked out the campus because he was a marine bio major, so we checked out the campus up here, and I ended up meeting the director of the biomedical marine sciences department in a CBS, and my brother recognized her, and she basically, just was like, "And what do you do?" And I told her, "Oh, I just graduated yesterday." And she's like, "And what?" And I was like, "I got a bachelor's in biology, and I'm planning to get my master's in biomedical sciences, and study for the MCAT, go to med school." And she said, "Oh, well, I'm the director of the biomedical marine sciences department of, over here at Harbor Branch." And I said, "Oh, really?" And she said, "Do you have a job?" I said, "I'm a bartender unless you want to give me a better job." And she said, "I think I do." And that's how I ended up here. She offered me the job right there in CVS. We had a meeting a week later, and then I moved up to Fort Pierce and started working for her. She became my thesis advisor. I ended up doing a thesis. She convinced me. That's how so basically I got this job, which was supposed to be while I'm working on my master's degree. She said, "Since you're doing all this research," she wanted me to immortalize the sponge cell. Now, I was not a marine biologist. I didn't know anything about marine anything. I was pre-med, human biology. I knew a little bit. I took, bio 1 and 2. And she's like, "Oh, I want you to immortalize the sponge cell." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Yeah, I'll do that." It was one of those like fake it till you make it. I was like, I'll just read a bunch of research papers and figure out what she's talking about. But basically, when I started working for her as a lab assistant, which was like doing invertebrate cell culture, she's like, "Since you're doing this project anyway, you might as well turn it into a thesis." So a 1-year non-thesis program turned into a 3-year thesis program. And it took a while. So by the time I finished my master's thesis, I was kind of burnt out and didn't really feel like doing another however many years in med school and residency. I ended up actually taking off to Panama for 6 months and living there before I came back to figure out what I was going to do next. So
how does one immortalize a sponge cell? Does it have to excel in battle or something, or what's the process?
Well, it's funny you say that because my boss didn't tell me she'd been working on it for 30 years. And she wanted it to be my master's thesis project. I ended up changing my project. But basically, the goal is to have a continuously dividing cell line in a lab, which we have from human cells, which originated from Henrietta Lacks, right? So we have like a continuously dividing human cell line, but they hadn't been able to produce it with sponge cells, which is like the lowest form, the lowest animal, the most simple animal of the animal kingdom. And yet there's still so much we don't know about it. But the whole reason why they were trying to basically grow sponge cells in a lab setting was because they make these, that part of the research at Harbor Branch was to find chemicals or some secondary metabolites, basically bioactive compounds that they test against cancer cells. So basically, there's tons of like novel compounds that they find in marine organisms like sea cucumbers and coral reefs and sponges that they test against cancer cells, for new medication. So my project ended up switching to a sponge because I did not, in fact, immortalize the sponge cell. But I ended up switching to a project where there was already a sponge called Axonella corrugata that created a tumor suppressant compound called Stevenson. So it was basically, my project became, how can I make that sponge overproduce the compound by different stressors and things like that, and checking its gene expression. So that's what I ended up doing for a while.
It's so crazy. I was just talking to one of my guests, Angela, I just had on the show, and she was in the holistic space too. She'd actually used ibogaine, so a psychedelic, to reverse her autoimmune disease. So you hear normally a lot of the mental health benefits, but this was actually a physiological benefit. But she was also talking about bee stings and cancer. And apparently there's, evidence showing that will kind of be almost like nature's chemo without destroying the entire body. And then fingers crossed, you hope that it restarts all the good cells again. This one actually supposedly leaves the good cells alone, but I'd never heard that before. But
that, I'm not, I haven't heard of that, but I mean, I think a lot of our health is based on lifestyle and nutrition for sure. There's a lot of things that you can do that I think really make a big difference in cancer. Plus, cancer research is difficult. I mean, they find, for example, Stevenson, they found, reduced tumors, and it still is not a drug that's used because there's a lot of preventatives and, checks and balances to try and make something be like a cancer drug. And if it doesn't make, big pharma lots of money, it isn't probably most likely going to make it through. But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. There's something that drives me crazy that I kind of want to talk about with cancer real quick is, how everyone has these nicotine pouches now, and they're oh, it's a nootropic and all this stuff, the Zins. And, when I was in college, I took a biology of cancer class, and it was more based off tobacco smoke, but obviously everyone knows that cigarettes cause cancer. But as far as carcinogen goes, carcinogens are caused by just about everything, right? Literally everything, polyester in your clothing leaches plastics, and using Teflon pans, and inflammation of any kind in your body. But most of the time, what a carcinogen is doing is affecting your DNA, right? It's causing a mutation or a mismatched base pair and all these things. But cigarette smoke actually attacks specifically, it doesn't attack your DNA, it attacks a protein. Well, it attacks a gene that creates a protein that actually protects your DNA. So you have this protein called P53 that basically goes around fixing all the issues with your cells from carcinogens. There's a reason we're not all riddled with cancer when we have all these carcinogens we're taking in continuously. And P53 is something that goes around and protects you. It's basically when he talked, it was Dr. Hertman, when I took biology of cancer, he said it was the mother protein. And cigarette smoke and everything affects the gene that produces that protein. The TP53 is the gene. Well, years later, everyone's promoting nicotine right now. And there's lots of people, they're it's just nicotine. It's not tobacco, which has all the other additives. And yes, there are benefits that they've been proving for nicotine, but I'm over here what are we talking about? Is there still not the issue of P53 and its effects, right? So I dug a little deeper to make sure that I'm not crazy and the research hasn't changed, because I think everything should be based off of actual science and validity when you're going to do something or prove something. And with nicotine, they're oh, well, it's got all these cognitive benefits and it may help with Alzheimer's and all that. And that's great, but you still have to consider the risk versus reward, because it does still have effects on P53, the one thing that's going around trying to prevent you from cancer. And over 50% of cancers have a mutation in the P53 gene today. So, when you're considering nicotine and using it as a stimulant and just using it in its pure form, they've done studies where it's not just inhaling it through tobacco smoke. They're using pure nicotine as an injection or ingestion, different studies, and they found that it still does increase tumor risk. It basically, when you have a gene mutation, it causes uncontrolled cell growth, which turns into a tumor, and P53 will stop that. So that's my rant. I just wanted to put it out there because there's so much research right now promoting nicotine, and you have to have your risk versus reward. There's other ways to improve cognitive function, like using lion's mane or something like that. That's a little bit healthier. But anyway,
I'm so
rant
glad that
over.
you no rant away. This is why I love these long form conversations, because we of course we're going to get to firefighting, but this is what I call the space between the lines, people's life stories and experiences. And if you look at a lot of studies, I was talking to a few fire researchers recently. We use that term culturally competent clinicians when it comes to mental health. But I realize there's a massive need for culturally competent research, because you will get someone, for
Absolutely.
example, who's never really even been around firefighters, and then spend all this time and money on, is the 4896 better than the 2472, rather than going, well, what's the actual question we need to answer? Maybe
Right.
we should say, well, this 56-hour work week, let's compare that to a 42-hour work. Now that's a study worth doing. What are we doing to these people? And there's so much research out there showing that sleep deprivation shift work is a known carcinogen. But again,
Absolutely.
there's that solid evidence, and the fire service is turning their head. And the same with the nicotine thing. I'm sure there's
Yes.
studies that show benefits, but who's funding those studies? Is it the tobacco companies? And then
Well,
what
I
was
mean,
it actually, that parameter of benefit
yeah.
compared to, like you said, exercise, ice baths, lion's mane, whatever the
Right.
holistic alternative is?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is where science and research is so difficult, because you can basically prove anything, right? Right. You can there's so much research on there's benefits to this, and then someone else will do a study and there's negatives. And I actually believe in on both sides, right? It's really difficult to look at the science, and you kind of have to have, like I always say, like your risk versus reward, where they have done studies that nicotine is assisting with Alzheimer's. Now they don't have as many like long-term effects on like how far nicotine actually benefits you. So like the studies aren't as long-term as they haven't been studied for as long, but there are cognitive benefits. Yes, it does help stimulate you, but like, really, are you going to take that risk knowing that it's affecting the protein that's preventing you from cancer, right? So there's lots of things that you can argue either way. I mean, just brown rice versus white rice, right? They have like tons of studies, and you can look at both of them, like which is healthier for you. One is like a whole grain one, the other one, it's like, oh well, right, white rice isn't good for you, but then white rice doesn't contain like a lot of like the oxalates and different things that can cause issues. It's really what research you study, and it can get really overwhelming, because a lot of health things have points on both sides, right? So it's really trying to sift through that and pick like the overall best choice. I have a hard time debating with people, especially firemen, because they don't like usually research real studies or use like legitimate research sites to base stuff. But it's very like, I always have an open mind. Like I'm not, because when the nicotine thing came up, I was like, okay, well, I remember in college about P53. I wonder if that still applies. Was it more just cigarette smoke? There's so much research promoting it. A lot of people are using it. It gives you a dopamine effect, but it gives you a dopamine effect because it's an addiction, right? So it causes that quick dopamine. Because of that, it causes addiction. And therefore, like a lot of people want to have good reasons why they can continue on with their addictions, right? So, but like doing the continued research, it was without fail still showing that yes, nicotine still has these effects. So it's just everything you research there are going to be positives and negatives to all of them. You just have to, like, there could be positives and negatives to alcohol, right? There, it depends on the amount you're drinking. It can still cause inflammation in your body, but a lot of everything that you're putting in your body or like putting in your life is going to be dependent on how healthy you are, which is actually scientifically proven. You fight more inflammation and your immune system works better by being happier and having good relationships in your life. And it completely affects the way things respond in your body. So everything can be altered. It's just, I could go on about all this stuff forever.
So what you're saying, if I can sift through the data, is if we had a global pandemic, maybe don't tell people to stay in their homes, watch TV, eat fast food, and not see their family or friends ever.
That's like the worst thing you can do.
Note to self, America.
They've already been proving how so Dr. Hart, I keep referencing him. Dr. Hartman was an instructor at FAU my last semester, and he taught biology of cancer. And he said a bunch of things that now they're just bringing into light. He said that you needed to get at least 15 minutes of sun a day without any sunscreen. He said you needed to eat a handful of blueberries because it's important to have antioxidants. He said that macrophages in our own immune system is what's going to help cure most cancers and things, and lifestyle and exercise and eating healthy. He was promoting that in 2009 when I took his class, and it's just now becoming more and more apparent. And I love it that, when I took his class, it was blowing my mind, just some of the things he was saying. So yeah, I think sunlight and screens or not using screens and getting outside and moving your body and getting your lymphatic system moving and, detox, all these things are super important for your well-being. I mean, they've proven relationships, how much it affects your life, right? Like loneliness can be just as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? Being in a relationship, but a healthy relationship, can actually make you live longer. It can increase your immune system. It reduces your cortisol levels. But obviously the opposite is also true for a toxic relationship. So it's just, and there's this thing called the dependency paradox, right? Which is, it's more an attachment theory. I like to read psychology stuff sometimes. So attachment theory is just the ways in which people are in relationships. There's like a secure attach, anxious attachment, avoidant, and then disorganized. But basically, there's this thing called the dependency paradox, right? Where we're taught to be like, you got to create your own happiness. You have to do things that make you happy, and nobody should affect your happiness. But in reality, people affect us all the time. In fact, relationships are the most important things we have in our lives, right? It affects like how you are at home. It affects how you are at work. It affects the choices you make. I mean, a lot of the times relationships might be the most important thing you have going on. And what the dependency paradox says is basically everyone is dependent in some way on their relationship. And this could be other types of relationships, not just, partnership. But you have a dependency, whether you like it or not, on these relationships. But the healthier the relationship, the more you actually become independent, which is why it's called the dependency paradox. So the more you can rely on someone and have trust and feel secure, the more you're able to go off and do your own thing and be an entrepreneur, go work on your life, create all these things because you're secure and you don't actually have to worry about that part of your life. So it's kind of interesting how we're always taught to just, make your own happiness. No one can affect you. But I mean, people affect us all the time. And when you're in some sort of toxic relationship, whether it's a friendship or whether it's work related or whether it's home life, you can't really thrive. You think about it, you're not really thriving. And I think a lot of the mental health issues with firemen, it's truly like our relationships that affect us almost more than the calls. That's just compounding effects, right? It's our relationships with our who we're with at work, our relationships at home. So, it really all ties in.
It's been really interesting kind of unpacking all of this the last almost 9 years now. It's crazy. These kind of aha moments that I've had as a sponge myself, an invertebrate. But the big awakening for us was the impact of unaddressed childhood trauma on us.
Yes.
And addressed, I truly believe post-traumatic growth, you can turn that into a strength. So I think it's not, something to be, sad about. It's just we have to see it, identify it, work through it, and then create that strength. Oh my goodness, the sleep deprivation, that was one that really made me start this conversation in the first place, this podcast, the impact of that on everything, including our mental health, and not to mention cancer and all the other things. But then the most recent one was the impact of organizational betrayal and toxic, working environments, and how much that factors into the mental health struggles of our first responders. if you're a police officer and you had a, justified shoot, and then your organization throws you under the bus, or you micromanaged by, your fire chief or whatever it is, you speak to these super motivated, passionate firefighters, and it's not, the job that is beaten down. It's the fact that they get no support. It's the fact that,
right.
there is that toxic environment. And so I think that has to be addressed, because there's one really tragic story. A friend of mine, who is a movement, strength and conditioning coach, and he featured a few Southern California firefighters in this video they did for one of the companies. And one of the young women ended up taking her own life, a few months later. And there was supposed to be organizational bullying going on in that particular environment.
Right.
So this is something that we need to talk about, because if the wrong people are in positions of power, of leadership, it can create such toxicity. It can literally destroy an entire department.
I think it's one of the biggest cancers of the fire service. I think it, being in the position I'm in, being a female in the fire service and being an instructor in the fire service, I've had my share of bullying, my different, there's been some difficult times I've really had to work through. And I will say, having the support of your crew or positive people and mentorship in the fire service is it's night and day. It changes everything. I went through a really difficult time, and I was having a difficult time at work. I was having a difficult time in my personal life, and I was ready to leave the fire service. Thank God for people like Aaron Heller, my boss, for On Scene Training Associates. Him and all the guys that work for that company, they are true gentlemen who really helped me through some really difficult times in my life. And you have these amazing firemen that truly are family. Like it's incredible, because the fire service can be the biggest family, but it can be a toxic family, or it can be a super healthy, amazing family that you absolutely needed. And it's just 100%. I think what you're talking about with the mental health and betrayal in whether it's your department or your crews or different things, it completely changes your experience as a fireman. Your mental health, I think it's the thing that affects your mental health more than anything. So
it's been almost sad is the best way of putting it, I think, to pull the curtain back on the profession that I love so much and see in some areas so much cowardice. And what I mean is, I'm not talking about you with the leather helmet and your mustache beating your chest. I've made entry on some, barn burners. Yeah. I'm talking about moral courage. So standing up, whether it's fighting to be with your family when you should be, rather than rolling over and taking mandatory overtime after mandatory overtime and not doing anything about it, or whether it's pushing back on, needing fitness standards in the fire service. And then the same with, the rising through the ranks, or even union leadership. There's so many areas that massively affect us, that there's so much cowardice around. And it's been locally here, trying to get people to just stand up and say, it's, why is this always on our shoulders? You are understaffed. It's your lack of leadership, and we're paying the price. And my child and my wife or my husband or whoever it is, they are paying the price when you still go home at 5 o'clock every day. So that's what I struggle with at the moment. Is I see all the TikToks with these fucking heroes, doing a forcible entry prop in their shorts and t-shirt, or duck walking, spinning the hose around. But that doesn't mean anything. That's just narcissism. Where real heroism in the fire service is actually doing the right thing. And that means on scene, being compassionate, being courageous when you need to, and make an entry on those dangerous situations. But it also carries over to when you go back to the station and your working environment. So for me, it's a real call for service for the right kind of person to be put back in the fire service, because I'm seeing there's a lot of wrong kind of people. If you can't even fight for your own fucking family, what are you doing wearing the badge? Yeah.
No, I couldn't agree more. And when I joined the fire service, I was 100%, it became my life. It was everything. Every day off that I spent was going to a conference, a training, a class. All I ever wanted to do was train every crew that I worked with. I'd show up at work and be like, so what can we train on today? I drove them crazy. I was just obsessed, and it really has that, it can have that culture, can have that hold on you if you make it your life. And one thing that I learned through different difficult experiences was how important it truly was to have things outside the fire service. Because when things start to go wrong and that's all you have to depend on, it really can mess with your mental health, like truly. But yeah, I mean, it is sad. There is a lot of people who are higher up that are making a lot of decisions and doing things that are definitely making things worse for us to just be able to do our job and to do it well and to do it efficiently. And not to mention, I mean, the fire service is already filled with, you know, you have really amazing people, but you also have a lot of people who are so judgmental and egotistical, and they, you know, they're going to assume how you're going to be just by looking at you. Like, you know, obviously being an instructor and a female in the fire service, I've had a lot of people judge me who don't know me, who just assume, you know, that I'm not going to be good at my job, or that I'm not going to train, or what am I doing teaching, and who do you think you are, and all these things. And it's truly like, we have this thing where you always say you can learn from anyone, but that's not always actually enacted, right? Like, people don't truly treat you that way. There's so much, you know, issues with ego and narcissism. Instead of just saying, like, are we doing the right thing? Are we helping people? Like, you know, if somebody's struggling, help them. Don't judge that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's a big role in having the right mentors in the fire service. And there's a lot of people who've been put into power that make things worse instead of better, for sure. So, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you.
I had Al Benjamin on the show, FDNY Rescue 1 legend, stayed at the firefighter rank, which I did as well. I mean, I think like Al, he probably got to the point where he's like, I don't want to be in the front seat. You know, this is too much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I was at 14 years. But he was so humble, and he had this whole thing that, you know, of course the new guys don't know what they're doing because they haven't been here 30 years. So, you know, as long as they're willing to learn, as long as, like you said, you know, you're asking to be shown how to do things, he was like, this is what you do. And yet you see, like, with this other kind of person that you're talking about, that they're, you know, snide remarks from the lazy boy, like, oh, these fucking new guys. It's like, well, you know, I grew up on a farm, for example. I know how to ride horses and muck out stables, but I actually didn't know how to take apart a chainsaw and change the chain and put it back.
Right.
I wasn't, you know, felling timber on my farm. So people showed me how to do that. People showed me how to throw ladders, how to pull hose. That was other people sharing their information. And to think that you would then, a year, 2 years in, be irritated by someone else wanting to learn, wanting to be shown how to do things. I mean, again, you're talking about narcissism. That's the ultimate narcissist. Like, this true, humble veteran firefighter is someone that's going to take you under the wing and say, let me show you. Now, if you don't get it on the third time, I understand the frustration. But, you know, initially, and Al always wanted to learn from other people. I've had coaches on here that ask me how I train people. I'm a white belt weekend warrior coach at best, but they're asking me, what do you do when you coach? That's the kind of true veteran that we need, the journeyman or journeywoman in a profession that's constantly learning and constantly wants to teach.
Yes, absolutely. I've been very fortunate, spending so much time at conferences and trainings, that I've gotten to know a lot of really amazing people in the fire service, people that I've gotten to work with and teach alongside. And one of them is Captain Morris, Robert Morris from FDNY, and he is one of, like, the most amazing men I've worked with in the fire service, because he barely says, he doesn't say much, right? He observes a lot. But he's over here, like the king of Forest Entry, right? And, you know, we have the Rex tool named after him and his son. And it's just like, I was very fortunate. He got placed in a group that I was teaching with at FDIC one year, and getting to learn and observe from that man was amazing. It was actually a very uncomfortable position for me. I basically was a lead at FDIC, and they put him in my group for me to be in charge, which was very, not only humbling, but a bit overwhelming. But he was probably the most, one of the most incredible people I've ever met. He was like, whatever you think we should do. And he was always supportive. I had this thing where I think when you're an instructor, one of the things that happens is you don't get to see what everyone else is teaching, which drives me crazy. I always want to know, like, what are they doing? So when I had my group, I had before we went to go teach at FDIC, I had everybody in my group teach their section to each other, like to our group. So it was really cool to learn from him. And he's just so humble. And he always, it's just, there's so many men in the fire, or people in the fire service that really lead by example, that always have stayed humble. And that's how he was for sure. And just being able to work with people who, like, those are true firemen to me, the guys that do their job, that are there to help, that are ready to learn, that are ready, he's in his, I'm not sure, I think late 70s, but he's still doing everything. And, he's trying to carry plywood up a ladder, and he's like, I'm all like, oh, do you need some help? And he's like, why don't you go check on some other thing? He just, he wouldn't let me help him. But it's just like, he's the kind that leads by example. And there's still a lot of really great firemen that are out there. But yes, there's like this ego that's taken over that really is such a different viewpoint of like what you originally thought when you get into the fire service, right? You want to leave the job better than you found it. You want to have respect for the badge, for the uniform, for the job, for the citizens. You're doing it for them. And a lot of the other things get in the way of all of that. And it's usually egos and attitudes and things where people are trying to portray a certain thing, but that's not what's coming out. Right. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah, it's an important conversation. I mean, like I said, it irks me, the social media Insta heroes that put themselves out there. There's the difference between sharing a different technique, but you
Right.
know who those sites are. We know who those people are. They themselves are humble. But there's this thing that, if you just buy a leather helmet, grow a mustache, and then film yourself, like I said, on a door prop or, duck walking, that all of a sudden everyone's going to go, yeah, you're the most courageous firefighter ever known. Rather than just getting on with your fucking job and learning for a while and attending the conferences and fighting for time off and fitness standards and mental health and all the things that will make you a better firefighter. But, I get pushed back on the 42-hour work week. Like, the 48, 96. Like, listen to what you are saying. You're saying that you would rather be away from your family longer and perform worse because sleep deprivation is making you a shittier firefighter and paramedic than actually have the guts to stand up and say, you know what, the way you've been doing it is wrong. That's real courage. I want to be home and watch my kids. I don't want to miss that ballet recital or, those first steps or whatever it is. My family is even more important than the fire service, and I adore the fire service, but they always came first, which is why I work for 4 departments. That was always behind it. So, it's a call to action. It's a call for real courage, because newsflash, we're not getting the fires that, our forefathers did. We're just not. So I think the fragile egos are trying to masquerade like, oh, but look at me on the fire ground. It's like, go train. But, the fact that you are doing those back-to-bed calls and showing compassion and empathy, that's equally, if not more important than making entry and putting out a kitchen fire. So embrace the whole position. Don't let your ego try and project that it's only the fire part that's important.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, there's so many things that, what's funny is a lot of people are like, oh, you're pre-med. How did you become a fireman? And I got to say, being a fireman is probably one of the most difficult jobs there is, because there's so many things you have to know. And it's, obviously your firefighting skills, but you have to understand and know vehicles, cars, so you know how to dismantle them and break them apart, right? You have to know building construction. You have to understand. I'm on the special operations team, and we also do hazmat. So that's all those specialties, TRT and hazmat, is just overwhelming to the amount of knowledge you need to know. It's like you really have to know a little bit about everything. And obviously in Florida, we run like 90% medical calls. So I'm a paramedic as well, and you're wearing all these hats and trying to manage it all. And truly, like, the sleep deprivation is so massively important, because your brain can't function properly when it's inflamed all the time and you're not getting enough sleep and you're stuck in a cortisol cycle, right? So if you aren't able to dump that cortisol and you're not able to get into your parasympathetic type rest and relaxation, you're not going to be able to perform. So they want more out of you for more hours, but at the same time, if you don't actually take care of yourself and are able to get the sleep and able to decompress and spend time with your family and reduce your cortisol levels, you're not going to be good at your job anyway. Your cognition's going to go down, your memory decreases, you're more irritable. I mean, I worked a couple 48s in the past 2 weeks, and I got to tell you, I wasn't at my best. My last shift, my officer said something to me, and it was true. I was tired. Luckily, I have an excellent officer now. He's his name is AJ Young. He's amazing. And I really absolutely love him. I'm very fortunate to have an officer who really cares, who trains, who's doing things for the right reason, who cares about our family life. So, there are still those guys out there. And I'm very, I love my crew. I'm very happy with my officer. But yeah, I mean, it's so imperative. It's such a cliche, right? You have to love yourself before you can love someone else. But truly, you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of other people. And that's super important in the fire service. If you're trying to, I got to a point where I got burnt out very early. I started teaching very early on in my career, which caused a lot of strife in my life. I started teaching with only 2 years on in the fire service, which I got a lot of judgments for. And there's like a whole story behind how I got asked to teach, how I decided to go ahead and help out with all that. But, I was, taking all these classes and conferences. I was teaching, I joined the combat challenge team. I was teaching the cadets. I ended up teaching fire academy and EMT and medical school. Medic school. I've had like 3 jobs while working, extra 48s to get off for conferences or trainings or classes on top of the actual running the calls and having difficulty social life. And I got burnt out. It got to the point where I actually had hives for a week from stress. And I was transported. We didn't know what was going on. I thought I was just having an allergic reaction. All of a sudden I had hives everywhere. I live right next to a firehouse. I called the guys, and the officer there was like, "Jenny, you need to go. You need to get checked out." He's like, you're getting more hives as you're here. And I was on, steroids and antihistamines and all these things for a week, and nothing happened. Nothing helped. And they would just come every single day. And my friend, one of my best friends, Cassandra, came over, and she's like, I think we need to do some yoga. I'm like, okay. So we did some yoga. She's like, maybe we need to have a mimosa and cry about our lives for a moment. I'm like, okay. So we did that, and we actually cried about our lives in my carport. And she's like, you know what I think is going to fix your hives? I'm like, tell me. She's like, I think we just need to do something really, really random and fun. And I said, okay, name it. I'm down. I'll do whatever it is. She's like, I think we should go rent jet skis, but I want my own jet ski. I was like, yeah, of course. I don't ride tandem jet skis. But anyway, so within an hour we were on jet skis. I let that thing go full throttle and we just went for it. And I did not get hives again. It's just, if you're not giving yourself that time to relax and finding your joy and finding your happiness and doing things for yourself, you're not going to be able to serve anybody else, including the community or the fire service. It's so important. And I'm all for, we do things for them, and our health is important, but our job is to focus and to search and to, to go in on the searches that, if there's a chance of life, you take those risks, but that doesn't take away the fact that you need to take care of yourself, in between all those times where you're choosing to risk your life for this job, right? Like, your life is still important. It still matters to go ahead and make sure you're in the right state of mind to be able to help everyone. Right. So
I said this in the couple of times I've done talks recently. Firstly, if you were, a football fan, baseball fan, whatever, and your favorite players only slept 4 days a week, how would that impact their game? And they just play a game. They throw a ball, they catch it, they put it in a hole, whatever the game is, but it's a game. Yes. Now take us. you are in a dead sleep. You've been running most of the night now. It's 3 a.m. You get woken up, you jump out of bed, throw clothes on, slide down the 2-story pole, get in the back of a tiller truck. I'm using my favorite department in California. Navigate to a fire, get off, throw a ladder, make entry to a 2nd-story window, do a primary search, find a child, find the window again, pull the child back down the ladder. Now you're on the front yard. There's a train right down your first due. So now the ambulance is held up or the rescue. So now you're doffing your gear and you're starting a pediatric cardiac arrest algorithm in your mind and trying to figure out drug doses.
Right.
And those people work 56 hours a week and 80 hours if you get mandatory. But the person who bags your groceries, and again, this is not demeaning to them, but a not life-threatening job or makes your coffee or whatever it is, at 40 hours, they tap out. And that's because they know that's a healthy thing for a regular person. And you put those two side by side, and not a single person has been explained to me anything that makes sense as far as why, other than, well, we've always done it that way. So when you put it in those terms and you're talking about performance and you got these chest beaters saying they're the greatest firefighter on the planet, and you're not even fighting for a work week that allows you to perform at the highest level, you're a liar. You're a damn liar. You're a peacock, because you want to film yourself on the fireground throwing a ladder, but you're rolling over when they tell you got work, mandatory, and now you're doing 2 civilian work weeks in a week, and your performance is dog shit. And it's science, it's absolute science. So this is, again, why there needs to be a pushback. If you're looking at performing at the highest level in the EMS side, the technical rescue side, the fire side, you should be demanding the same kind of environment that our special operators get, that our sports people get. But in the fire service, we just take scraps and then we just say, oh yeah, well, chest beating again. Like, well, this job isn't for everyone. I'll sleep when I'm dead. And it's like, no, that's bullshit. You're just telling yourself a fairy tale. If you truly take this job seriously, you, as you said, will train at the highest level, but you will also demand the rest and recovery that will allow you to perform at the highest level.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's obviously super important. We really, in order to do this job well, you need to be well. You need to be well, right? Your body needs to be well. Your mind needs to be well. And so we already have, besides lack of sleep, we already have so many things that are affecting us, right? We're already in our sympathetic state most of the time because of the calls, because of constantly having to be ready, the tones going off. You're basically always living with your cup all the way full, which is why when things go wrong in your family life or something else, like all of a sudden the pieces are crumbling, right? And sleep deprivation, I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you want to fight to be the best at this job, we need to be fighting to be able to get enough sleep to do our jobs properly, to be functioning at our highest level, because we are making life choices, like life decisions for people on a constant basis on a couple hours of sleep. And if we're not catching up and we're not thinking clearly, we can, that's how human error is a real thing. So, I mean, we have human error in science and we have human error in our daily lives whenever you're, in the medical field. So it's just, I 100% agree. If you are fighting to do this job properly, you should be fighting to do it in a healthy way, not just training, which is important, not just training and fitness, but being able to fight for getting enough sleep so you can function properly. 100%.
People, for so long now said I need to see the data on why a 56-hour work week is worse than a 42. And again, I facepalm in the most aggressive of ways, and you really need a study to show that. But okay, I'll bite for a second. Let's flip it round. I can give you a 50-year longitudinal study on how not to do it, because our graveyards are full of firefighters. So there's your data. We know about the cancer and the heart disease and the suicides and the failed pregnancies and all these other things, the alcoholism and the opioid overdoses. I mean, it's there, it's rampant. And also, if you want to take the acuity side, how many of our line of duty deaths that weren't from chronic disease are also attributed to sleep deprivation? The tankers that roll over, the intersection wrecks, falling off an aerial, getting lost in a primary. How many of those could have been avoided if those responders were actually well slept?
Right. I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything that you're doing and everything you're fighting for. I know about trying to show people that how the importance of it. I mean, you're not going to be functioning at your best no matter what. And you know, I I definitely think that when you're trying to make these quick decisions, you already know this. Like if you haven't slept and you're trying to do anything during the day, trying to cook, trying to clean normal tasks, it already becomes far more difficult, right? Like you make simple mistakes. So 100% putting your life on, like other people's life on the line while you're sleep deprived it's not a badge of honor. You know, it's a detriment, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's already so many things, that come along with this job is really I always say it's a lifestyle. It's not a job because it's for, we are still, my department is still 24/48. So every 3 days, this is where a third of my life is at the firehouse, running calls and eating what the guys eat, like spending time, living that lifestyle, like whatever's going on, your home life, your sleep, all of that is going to affect it. And there's already so many things besides sleep deprivation that are already, causing health issues and mental health issues, whether it's physical or mental, which both equate to overall health. Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's truly sad. Like, it's something that 100% needs to be spent a lot more time. I think it's slowly coming around, but yeah, obviously there's a lot of resistance because it might not work out financially to have that schedule because now we have to hire a whole nother shift, and it's something that's difficult to convince, but the science is obviously there. I mean, you don't even need to have these specific shift studies to prove the science of lack of sleep. There's lots of lack of sleep studies that prove how it affects your cognition, your inflammation, your heart disease risk, your cancer risk. So, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you've been fighting for sure.
Well, what's weird as well, not weird, but I guess frustrating too, is, you get these air quotes financial gurus in cities and counties. And just asking, because a lot of departments are coming to me now saying, how do we get this started? Again, I'm not the expert. I send them to all these departments that have done it. I can certainly talk about the principles and all those things, but how do you actually put it in practice? That's Pasco, Gainesville, all these departments that have done it already. They're the experts.
Right.
But basically, if you look at the money you're wasting on overtime because no one wants to work for you, and the money that you spend on training a new recruit who then leaves your department 2 or 3 years later, and the money you're spending on workman's comp and line of duty death payments and medical retirements and lawsuits from mistakes that we make, there are tens of millions of dollars downstream. So it's not even more money. Yes, this fiscal year you will need a little bit more, but then you're going to save money hand over fist downstream. So there's
and
a beautiful.
It could just save lives of firemen in general.
Well, that doesn't matter, because clearly, if that was the problem, if that was actually something that moved people, we would have fixed this years ago.
Right.
So that isn't, enough to move people. I mean, it's enough for me to leave the fire service, give up my pension, and start a podcast. But it wasn't enough for a city or a county council member to actually fight for their own people as they're burying them, annually. So it's the dollars and cents that talks. But if you look at Pasco and Gainesville, they showed, look, was tens of millions we're losing for nothing, and we're destroying our firefighters in the process. And then the moment they make the switch and they tell the world, hey, we're going to be going to this shift, they have lines around their buildings for recruits wanting to work for them. And then lo and behold, those vacancies are filled, and there's still overtime. There's day duties and other things, but it's infrequent. So now these people are forced to rest, maybe even start an entrepreneurial project on the side, which is very healthy as long as you sleep at night. And now, as you said, you've torn that identity from being all in as a firefighter to it's something that I do and I love, but I'm also a surfer and a yoga, student and all these other things. And then, now I've started this health business or whatever it is on the side. Now you've got another entire identity, entire tribe. So no matter how you look at it, the answers are there. And there's a Desmond Tutu quote that I absolutely adore, which sums us up perfectly. It says, we're so busy pulling people out of the river, we forget to go upstream and find out why they're falling in the first place. That's it. That's all we're asking you to do.
Great quote.
Take that money and put it in the front.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important. We can only hope that people who can make these decisions will start, spending more time really diving into it and understanding the purpose behind it and the importance. So
yeah,
100%.
Absolutely. Well, the other good thing is that, as departments go to it, it's going to force others to as well, because otherwise they're not going to be able to hire anyone, because no one's going to want to go to you.
I 100% agree with that.
Keep the revolution.
Yes, they're going to have no choice.
All right. Well, I'll get off my soapbox. I get on there a lot. I apologize, but I think it's just important to reiterate this, because we're talking about performance and health. This is just one of the what I call the herd of elephants in the room. Going back to your journey, though, we left you in Panama. Before we even talk about what was next, talk to me about Panama, because there's so many countries that do so many things well, that I think other people need to hear about. So what were the things that you loved about Panama? And then also, were there any things that country, maybe could learn from the US or somewhere else?
Oh, I mean, learning to enjoy life and slow down. I mean, that's pretty much all of Central America. But I finished my master's degree, and I actually got married and took off to Panama. I had already been planning it, and then I started dating somebody. We ended up getting married, and we called it our honeymoon. But basically, I was already going. I lived in Bocas del Toro, which is a little island on the Caribbean side. So I didn't spend a lot of time in the whole rest of the country. I mainly stayed on this group of islands here. I lived on one of the islands that had no vehicles. I lived in basically a cabin that collected rainwater and had like propane for the stove and for heating up the shower and everything. So it was like all self-sufficient there. And we had some friends there. We'd jump on the boat and go right out to a surf break and go surfing. It was basically to just surf. But I will say it definitely is a different lifestyle in Central America. I've spent time in Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, all for surf trips mainly. This was my third time in Bocas del Toro when I went to go live there. And, the way of life there it's just different. Everyone just hangs out. There's a reason why everyone's late. It's because no one's in a rush. Like, oh, let's get dinner tonight. What time do you think? 6, which really means like 7:30. And you just show up when you show up, and nobody's mad about it. You hang out there, you sit, you talk, you enjoy life. You watch the sunset, you watch the sunrise. I would like take a break and just pop open a coconut and drink that when I was thirsty. It was just beautiful. It was one of the best things I ever did. And then surfing itself is one of the greatest gifts I've ever had in my life. It's just such a way to connect with nature, to clear your mind. It made such an impact in my life. But anyway, so as far as Panama and being in Bocas del Toro, yeah, I mean, just the appreciation for life and family and community. Community is such an important thing. And we kind of lose a lot of that in the States. We have like social community or social media and things like that, but actually spending time putting our phones away. I mean, well, obviously I was in another country, so I wasn't just using my phone all the time, but nobody just like played on their phones all day. We just hang out and spend time together, cook some homemade foods, and, the vegetables were fresh. The eggs, they don't put in the fridge. They're just like on the counters, which I guess you only really need to refrigerate if you've washed them off and all this stuff. But it's a way of life that I definitely can appreciate. I wouldn't mind retiring in Central America eventually.
So what brought you back from Panama, and then how did that lead you to the fire service?
Okay, so I ran out of money. Um, but no, the plan was always to go for like around 6 months, just to disconnect and leave everything behind. When I came back, I was kind of over school. You know, I did my bachelor's for 6 years, then I did my master's for 3, because of doing the thesis and everything and changing my project halfway through. And the next thing I know, I was just burnt out on school. I was like, I don't want to go to school forever. So I was actually applying to PA schools. And me and my husband at the time were over at a friend's house who surfed, and was a fireman for Palm Beach County. And my husband was actually talking to him. I have like a short attention span, so I'm like staring off at something. And he's asking him basically like, how do you have so much time to surf? Like, what do you do? And they just started talking about work, and I wasn't even paying attention. And my husband just smacked me on the shoulder, and he's like, you should be a fireman. And I was like, huh. I never really thought of it. I mean, I grew up with a single mom. It's not exactly like the role that I had pictured for my life or even considered. It's funny because I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, they do medical stuff, and I like the medical side, and you have to be fit, and I like working out, and I like doing adrenaline stuff. I've been skydiving a bunch of times and been in a submarine, and like, you know, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds cool. And the next day I applied to EMT school. It's not a very romantic story. I literally just changed my mind like that. So the next day I applied to EMT school, got in right away. I was actually teaching at the college when I came back. I was teaching anatomy labs. So they were kind of laughing at me taking an EMT class while I'm teaching at the same college, you know, anatomy classes. And they were always asking, like, is that right? And I'm like, you know, while I was in class, but it was a good time. It was great. So I went through EMT school. This is how little I knew about the fire service. When I did ride times for EMT school, I went to a firehouse, and I met all the guys, and, you know, I came back home and they're like, oh, how was it? I was like, oh, I met this guy, and, you know, I'm saying their names, and I met this guy, LT. I thought that was like his name. I did not realize that was Lieutenant.
So many like, LTs, it's weird. It's a really popular name.
Yeah, I'm like, every firehouse has an LT. It's so strange. No, but I really did not understand a lot of the culture. I didn't grow up around any firemen. My uncle, he passed away, but he was a police officer, but he lived in Texas. But I didn't have, you know, I didn't really know anything about fire service until I jumped into EMT school. Then when I was getting ready for fire academy, I knew a guy from surfing who was like the most fit guy I knew. And he was a lifeguard, and I called him up and said, hey, can you train me? You're like the fittest person I know. And so he had me meeting him at his lifeguard stand, and we dragged tires in the sand and pushed the 4-wheeler. There's like the beach 4-wheeler, he'd have me push it in the sand, and like people were always coming up to try and help me. And I'm like, no, it's not broken down. He's making me work out. But so I worked out outside, and I got like really obsessed with the training. Like I met him as many times as I could. Our PAT to get into fire academy was basically the combat challenge with I think at the time it was a 25-pound weight vest, but it was the combat challenge course, was the entry exam for the fire academy. So I basically mimicked as many things as I could of that course. I'd work out in a parking garage and carry weights up and like hoist up weights from a rope and do all kinds of stuff to prepare. And so I ended up getting into fire school, loving it. And that was it. Like, I was like, this is it. This is what I wanted to do. I was like, I became obsessed. I was the first female class leader at IRSC, which ended up, I ended up failing my midterm. I had like a kink in my hose. And then when I went to retest, my ladder got taken by the wind. Long story short, it was like the hardest thing ever. I like worked so hard to be there, was the first female class leader in the history of the fire academy there, and then failed. So in such an epic failure, it was like, I was like devastated. So I ended up just training harder, going back, did fine. I ended up becoming the first and second female class leader. But anyway, it all worked out. And then, so I joined the fire service. I got hired at 29. I worked for one department, switched to the department that I'm at now. So I started it later in life, and it just kind of popped up out of nowhere, unexpected. It was quite a turn. So yeah, that's where it started.
Talk to me about the elements of your strength and conditioning that you had to focus on. When I got into the fire service, I was, I don't even know what I weighed before I started training, but I mean, I've been very tall, like 6 foot tall, and then very, very slim. So long levers, but not a lot of strength around them. So, I would run, there was a 4.5 mile course or lap around Orlando near Station 10 there. And then I would, on my lunch breaks from my regular job, I would go to the YMCA and lift weights and do pull-ups on the stairs, and it was almost like a Rocky montage. And then I would go to the fire academy early and do the sleds and stairs and hose and all kinds of stuff, because I realized that just because I happen to be a certain gender doesn't mean that I've got all the elements that's going to make me a good firefighter. So I knew that I was I had a motor, I was fit, but I didn't have the raw strength, and that's what I had to really work on. And when you hear this conversation about women in the fire service, men in the fire service, whatever, it's just about, do you have the physical tools, regardless of your gender? So I had the humility to know all the elements that I had to work on, and worked my ass off and never stopped the entire career and then beyond. So when you got in, and for example, the wind is starting to take the ladder from you, what were the tweaks that you made in your training in the academy and beyond to make sure that having a smaller frame, you were still strong enough to be able to do the job?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because this has been basically all I've focused on for the past however many years. It's part of what I taught. What I've taught in the fire service is basically using techniques and body mechanics in order to accomplish the same tasks as everybody else. So when I was training to get into fire academy, like I said, I worked out with his name was Justin Baker, a good friend of mine, and I think one of the important things for training was the fact that we did everything outside in the sun. A lot of people work out in the gym, so we're doing everything not only outside in the sun, but in the soft sand on the beach. He's having me drag a tire that's filling up with sand as I'm dragging it. So a lot of resistance training. And our workouts were like an hour long, and really it was just having a good mentor that helped me. He had weights and dumbbells. I never worked out in a gym when I was training for fire academy. It's something that it's a weakness of mine to not just go lift weights in a gym. I do a lot of body weight lifting. I would flip tires and use dumbbells and stuff, but I had never at that point even used a bench press. And when I trained for fire academy, I still hadn't. But it was a lot of circuit training. I'd wear weight vests. I wear the high altitude masks, to restrict your breathing, basically to, help with your cardiovascular, demands. But as I got through, as I went through fire school and I had issues with the ladder. Now I hadn't had any issues up until my midterm where I failed. But the first day I ever went to go throw a ladder, it was the first time that I definitely, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. And right there, I had this moment of, should I quit? Not because I wanted to ever quit anything, but because I don't think you should do this job unless you're going to be able to do every aspect of the job. And I was worried that this is something that I couldn't do. But, luckily I had really great instructors at Indian River State College, and even the chief there, he was like my height. He's giving me different techniques for body mechanics and basically, what to work on with it. But also having a good core strength, I think is super important. But yeah, as not just in fire school, but it's having people and techniques like using your arsenal of friends and people who you look up to. I think if there's anything you want to do in life, you should go find somebody who does it well. And that was like me with Justin Baker. Oh, you're the most fit person I know. And, you know, you can accomplish everything. He got me into the best shape of my life at, you know, I think I was like 28 or 29 when I started Fire Academy. I can't remember, but it was the best shape of my life. And so you don't need to go to a traditional gym, but you do need to stay active. Cardio is super, super important. A lot of people just lift weights and they forget about the cardio side, but half the times I would do better than a lot of the guys because I could outlast them and I would just continue on. And, you know, I was like I was like the Energizer Bunny, basically. I would just keep on going. But like, I think that it's something that's really important, especially as a female, is to continue to work out and stay in shape. That's something I've been in the fire service for almost 10 years now. It's been something that's been very important that I've always tried to preach and to push. I teach at the local fire academy. I do a workout every lunch break, in full gear on air. And it's not just to set an example. I think it's important to set an example to show that you're going to go put in the work, but it's also because you, as a 5'4.5" woman, I have to work out. I have to stay in shape to do my job, right? Some people are like, why are you always doing it? I have to. There was a time when I got hired on and I'd go throw ladders all the time. And the guys were like, why are you always throwing a ladder? And I'm like, I have to. You don't understand. If I don't throw ladders, then I can't do it. I have to stay active doing it. I have to be efficient and proficient at it. So if I'm not throwing ladders, I'm doing a disservice to everybody in the community when it's needed, right? And, you know, you have to stay active in that for sure. So, yeah, I mean, health and fitness is massive, especially as a female, for everyone, but especially as a female. I mean, you know, genetics alone, we're usually stronger lower body. I mean, everybody's stronger in their legs. I mean, it's your bigger muscles, but you know, guys tend to have higher upper body strength. And there's a lot of ways. I think there's anything that you can overcome if you spend enough time and learn techniques. So, which is how I ended up basically teaching later on, you know, but yes, that was a long way of saying I like to work out.
No, but it's important. But it's funny because you said when you were 5'4", you needed to work out. When I was 6 foot and I needed to work out, I think this is the point. If you're, you know, an ex-linebacker turned firefighter, you need to work out. It's just we're all focusing on different things. The linebacker, chances are their endurance isn't going to be great unless they're a, you know, physical phenom. And then the slimmer person's going to have to work on their strength, and the kind of mesomorph might have to kind of balance the two of them. But the point is, you know, the goal is that you're the best version of yourself so you can respond. So these guys that are like, well, you know, I can still make it happen on the fire ground. It's like, okay, that's all well and good. Yeah. But if you drop 30 pounds and stop smoking, imagine how much better you would be. And what if you carry with you the fact that you couldn't make it up that high rise because you hadn't trained? What is that going to do to you mentally? Because you know damn well that you chose a lazy boy over the gym every time you were on shift. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's obviously its own epidemic in the fire service is you know, not staying fit. I think it's a huge disservice to yourself and to everyone that you're trying to serve. You know, not just working out, but the fact that it's why conferences were so important to me, because I had to really hone in on my techniques, because if I couldn't just like do things from brute strength, I really had to learn techniques to do everything. And so like, I think it's super important. It's why reps are so important. So not only staying physically fit, but finding those techniques so that you can function and do your job without basically, you know, so you could function and do it just as well as anybody else. And I just think that like, that's also a really important aspect. And conferences and trainings made a huge difference for that for me, you know, like far more than, I mean, I got a lot of training in my departments and with people on the crews, but you go to a conference and you're learning from people all over the country. They got different techniques, they got different ways of doing things, and it made a massive difference in my confidence and my skills. So.
It blew me away when I first entered the fire service, and then kind of been on long enough to start reflecting on the environment that we work in, that there was such a resistance to fitness standards. And you mentioned about Justin being a lifeguard. A lot of the ocean lifeguards I've had on here, and I was a open water lifeguard before, you have to recertify. A lot of the ocean guys are doing it every 6 months. And if you don't recertify, you're not a lifeguard anymore. And, there's this pushback again about, but, it's not fair. And what about if they take my job? And ironically, yesterday on Facebook Memories, I cashed out my pension to do this job, this podcast. And it got to the point where I was almost out of money and I hadn't got a sponsor. And so I was getting ready to test yet again for department number 5. And so, having humility, I was like, well, let me go do a practice CPAT and make sure that I'm ready, so that then I get all these pieces together for, the fire teams or whatever I end up doing. And at 45 years old, my CPAT was 720. I'm not the fastest. I've never won medals for powerlifting. I've never won medals for sprinting, never won medals for triathlon, or, you know what I mean? I'm not an elite athlete. It's just someone who took the job seriously. So if a 45-year-old skinny dude can take 3 minutes off a CPAT, then I don't understand how people can say it's not fair to have a fitness standard when, comparable professions like ocean lifeguarding and special forces and SWAT all have that bench set. And if you fall below it, you don't do the job anymore. So that's kind of my perspective and my frustrations. You work so hard to get this profession. You got a background in, the health side as well. Talk to me about fitness standards and hiring standards as well, as we're seeing them start to slip.
Yeah, actually, this is something I'm very passionate about as far as, I teach Fire Academy, and I think it's super important to be able to pass fitness standards. I don't think that there should be a separate standard for females or anyone, because we are all competing for the same job. We're all expected to do the same thing. So I'm very passionate on, you either have trained and you have prepared for it or you have not, right? And it has nothing to do with your age, your gender, your race, anything like that. I think the most important thing is being able to actually do what you are set out to do, train to be there. I trained really hard to be there. I spent all my time. Justin's a fireman as well now. He was a lifeguard at the time. But I called him every day. We were doing 2 workouts a day at times. And as far as continuing, there has been times where women specifically have been hired on when they haven't passed their times or they've gotten into certain classes. And I just, it's almost like an insult, because a lot of us have spent a lot of time to work to be there. And I don't think that something should just be handed to you for fairness. It's not fair. It's not fair in any way, because then you're not helping the rest of the people who have to work with the person. You're not helping the community who needs somebody who's trained and fit to be able to get them out. And, it is what it is. You've either trained and prepared for this job or you haven't. And on top of it, you're right. As far as maintaining it, I mean, it's very easy to get complacent. It's very easy to get tired and burnt out and have life go on where you want to just relax and you don't want to work out. And having fitness standards that are set to continue on, I think, is imperative. Our department has just gone to the past few years doing the FPAT every year as our standard. And so I'm glad we started doing that. I think it's important. Not every department has a fitness standard that we do every year, but it isn't just to do your job well. It's to maintain your health while doing this job. Not only do you need it if you have to carry extrication equipment and gear, and perform an extrication or, throw ladders and do VES or whatever you're doing, you need that fitness standard. You need that training. And if you haven't been and you get assigned tasks, I mean, it's kind of like you're taking a risk, right? You're gambling on yourself to be able to accomplish it. And the people who you're going to save, that, they need you at your best. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with keeping up fitness standards with, I'm very passionate about it. I think it's something I try and work out every shift. It doesn't happen every shift. Sometimes I think it's also important, just as important to work out it is to rest. Sometimes there are days where maybe you do need to sit on the recliner. Maybe you just need a break, and that's okay, as long as that's not your standard, right? Like your body needs rest. Sometimes I have this thing where I try and work out after shift immediately. I go to the stadium whenever I'm out of shift. If I'm not teaching Fire Academy, if I'm at Fire Academy, I do an air comp during my lunch break. But there's days where I go to work out and I'm just spent. I'm exhausted, and I'll do like a very minimal workout. Sometimes I'll go there and I'm just like, I am too tired, and I leave. And it's not because I don't want to continue my fitness, but it's important to listen to your body. Sometimes you just need to rest. Like you're overexerting, your lack of sleep. So, but overall, yes, fitness and training standards, people need to be held accountable throughout their career to continue on their career. It's for their own benefit, so.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing that's so crazy with the conversation. There's no downside. And I've said this so many times, our certification in Florida is literally labeled minimum standards. This is the shittiest you should ever be your entire career. You just squeak through the door. Here's the key to the lock. So by maintaining that, if you do it immediately, like this is the annual standard, no one's going to say, well, it's not fair because you just did it in the academy. But now you got people saying it's not fair, you're trying to take our jobs, and no one's saying we're going to implement a standard tomorrow, and if you can't meet it, you're fired. Of course, there would be a 2-year on-ramp to make sure everyone's kind of brought up to where they need to be. But like you said, the other thing is now you're prolonging lifespan. So by opposing fitness standards, you're saying, oh, it's fine that we're losing people in their 50s. I've got no problem with that. Just don't try and take our jobs. Like, no, that's bullshit. That's another thing with the cowardice. If you really actually care about your men and women, you'd make damn sure, and this goes hand in hand, you've got to create an environment of rest and recovery, so the 42-hour work week, and then you got to put in a fitness standard and one that's job related. And the beautiful thing about ours is you can do a CPAT or the fire sled version of a CPAT. You did that at the beginning, you just keep doing it. Like you said, it doesn't matter black, white, gay, straight, male, female. A hose is a hose, a ladder is a ladder. So no one can fucking cry about the fact that you're being asked to do fireground tasks. But then what is going to happen? You're going to transition out. You're going to have a healthy retirement. You're going to watch your grandkids grow, versus some, freaking pussy ass version of justification of why you shouldn't have a fitness standard. And now you're burying your men and women before they even get to retire. So there is no downside, again, apart from having the courage to stand up and say, you know what, we do need this, we do need the standard in place. We were wrong. Let's change it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's really easy for, people who make a lot of administrative decisions to kind of forget some of the things that, once they've been here, once they left the line. But, I think sometimes the focus can be on the wrong thing. We're focused more on how we present, how we look to the public versus how good we are at our jobs, how fit we are, how good our health is, how good our training is. And I think if we just get back to the basics of that, it makes everybody actually happier and better at work. Like, the more training you do, the more knowledgeable you are, the more confident you are in your job, the more you can do things securely. The more fit you are, same thing. The more confident in your job, the more you're able to do well, the more you take care of your body. Everybody wins, right? So yeah, I mean, 100%. I think overall, everybody wins. The community wins and you win. Your department wins. When your people are happy and healthy, everybody works better. So yeah, I mean, keeping a health standard is imperative. Being able to get sleep, taking care of yourself. The happier you are as a person, the better you perform. And that goes without saying with staying fit, eating healthy, working out, sleeping. I mean, it's all the necessities of life. So
100%. Well, speaking of training, you kind of mentioned earlier how you found yourself in the training position very early. So walk me
Yes.
through, how that happened, some of the elements that you train on now, and then, what were the resistances that you encountered?
Okay. So yes. um, I didn't even have 2 years on the job yet, and I went to the Nickelback conference in Osceola, and Chief Halton, Bobby Halton, was speaking, and basically it was, I had already been to the Orlando Fire Conference and Fort Lauderdale Fire Conference. I mean, you know, uh, I went to every conference I could possibly get my hands on, and every class. I'd taken survival class, I'd taken whatever, any class I could take, I took. And here I am at the conference, and I went to go talk to Chief Halton afterwards about his lecture and a lot of the things he said. And we just got to talking, and out of nowhere, he says to me, "Oh, I want you to come teach at FDIC." And I literally didn't answer him because I'm like, he probably thinks I have a lot more time on in the fire service because I'm 30. But one of my friends was standing right next to me. His name is Lou Castanelli. He's from Poughkeepsie, and he just responds for me because I was stunned. And he just said, "What she's trying to say, Chief, is she'd love to." So right away, I just said to him, like, "Oh, listen, yes, that is a huge opportunity, and I absolutely appreciate you offering that to me. But just to let you know, by the time FDIC rolls around, I'll have a total of 2 years in the fire service, so you can take that back, and I won't be offended." Is what I told him. And he looks at me and he goes, "No, I want you to teach at FDIC." And I was just like, okay. Okay. So he gave me his cell phone number, and he's like, "I want you to call me. Don't worry. It's this is what he tells me. It's a female firefighter fitness class." Now, it was not a female firefighter fitness class, but anyway, this woman, Katie Johnson, was leading the class, and he hooked me up with her. He basically told her that I'm going to be in the group. I didn't just call him right away because I have a lot of respect for the fire service and for teaching. And I understand that it takes time, and experience before you're put in a role like that. I had been a teacher for a while, and, at the local college, and I taught at FAU while I was getting my undergrad. And I have an appreciation for experience and things like that. And so, before I called Chief Halton, I got advice from some really good friends of mine and people that I respect in the fire service. And one of them was Mike Salzano. He's a chief in Fort Lauderdale. And he said something that I take with me everywhere I go in life. Because I basically told him, like, "Hey, what should I do? I was given this opportunity. I know I don't have that much time on. I know I'm going to be given a hard time." And he says, and at this point I had talked to Katie, and basically the class was engine and truck work. Right. And she said, "What do you think you could work on?" And I said, "Oh, there was a victim removal portion." And I said, "Oh, I'd really like to do the victim removal portion. It was something that I struggled with, and did a lot of training and techniques and things." I said, "That's what I'd like to work on it." Well, she ended up making me the lead of that section. Right. So, back to talking to Mike, I was just like, "What should I do?" And he's like, "All right." He's like, "Do you think that you're going to teach something that's going to help people?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "Do you think you're going to teach something that people are going to use to save lives?" I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, then fucking do it, and just do a good fucking job. That's it. Don't worry about what everybody else thinks. If you're going to do something that's going to help people, then do it. That's it. It's that simple." And I was like, okay. Because there's all these egos and there's all these issues, and everybody wants to teach, and I don't want to be that. He's like, don't go around like bragging that you're teaching. Don't do this. Just go teach and do a good job. And if you do it, do a good job. Make sure that you're teaching something that has meaning that people can take back. And I was like, all right. And it's advice that I use for a lot of different things in my life that it just meant a lot. But I talked to him, I talked to a couple other guys, and basically, so I decided to go ahead with it. I ended up teaching at FDIC. I think what was the first year, like 2018, maybe. I think it was 2018. But anyway, I ended up teaching VES and victim removal. And the whole reason that it was something that I wanted to teach is because when I was training, when I first got hired on in my first department, I had, we were doing VES training and I had to throw a guy out a window and I failed at it. I could not get him out. And I had that moment again, just like with the ladder, like, oh my God, I shouldn't do this job if I can't do all the aspects of this job. But I ended up training and I went to conferences and I took VES classes and I came up with some things on my own. I went to Fort Lauderdale Fire Expo and Orlando Fire Conference, and those two conferences alone were like huge for my training, understanding, and I, like, all of the instructors were more than willing to help me with any techniques that I needed extra help on. And basically, I took the thing that I sucked at the most and became really proficient at it, so that it was something that I never wanted to question if I could do that part of the job. So anyway, I ended up, between things that I've accumulated from classes and coming up with some of my own techniques and maneuvers, it became a passion of mine to be able to move victims and like be able to throw, large men out windows. So yeah, I went and I taught for FDIC as teaching in the victim removal portion. My first year there, I did that for a couple years with Katie. Because of my class went really well. I did what Mike told me to. I did a good job. I spent the time to make sure that, I wasn't just out there BSing. Like, I took the time to really hopefully make a big impact. And whenever I teach everything myself. In other words, there's lots of people who teach with me, who have assisted me, but I purposely will do all the victim jags and throw people out a window because I want to make sure that they know if I can do it in my size, then you can definitely do it. It doesn't speak the same way if you have a big, bulky, 6 foot tall dude, moving people around. Although a lot of the techniques have helped people who are, bigger in stature. But so because of the class going really well at FDIC, Aaron Heller had people who had taken my class. I had known him because at this point I was divorced and I was dating somebody in the fire service who actually worked for Aaron as well. And so we all knew each other already, but somebody had sat in on my class, and Aaron wanted to give me a chance to teach with On-Scene Training Associates. So that was, I think I started working for him after 3 years. So really, really early on, which came with a lot of judgments with teaching. But I think the most important part was trying to stay true to myself. I used to always give this lecture before I taught, and a lot of the guys were like, stop saying that, Jenny. You don't need to do it. But I did it anyway. I don't care, because I thought it was really important to be authentic and honest. Every time I taught victim removal or anytime I taught something, I would give a disclaimer like, hey, I've only been in the fire service for, 2 years, 3 years, 4, whatever it was. This is something that I was not good at, that I was really passionate about, that I got training on. I haven't personally had a victim that I've saved from a house, besides bunnies and dogs. But I always say that open and honest, because I never want somebody to come back and be like, who do you think you are? And what do you even know? You don't have this and this much time. I know that. I share that. I have nothing to hide. I'm not trying to say I'm better than everybody else or that I have so many years of experience. What I'm trying to do is say that there's techniques and tricks for people who are a little smaller that can make this job better. And, moving a person is a lot different than moving a mannequin. And that's something that became also very passionate to me when I teach search or I teach VES or victim removal. I use live victims because they don't move the same way as a mannequin. We always train on mannequins. And so the times have changed from when I started teaching. A lot more people are using real victims versus using mannequins, but it makes a big difference with your techniques. So anyway, Aaron decided to give me a test run for teaching with him in Louisiana in, I think it was 2019. We had a Burnin the Bayou conference down there, and it went well. He asked me to officially join On-Scene Training Associates, and which was really one of the biggest blessings that I could have in the fire service, because here I am getting to teach for a company that has so many experienced firemen from all over the country who are just true gentlemen that are really uphold the values of integrity and friendship and honesty. And, here he is, a guy who is in the textbooks giving me a chance to teach without the ego of, what do you know with only 2 years on as a female? You know what I mean? And it really was, he really helped build my confidence and truly believed in me before I even did, so it was really pretty amazing. And I've been very, very fortunate as far as that's been concerned. But yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of shit for teaching very early on in my career. I've had people send me nasty texts. I've been made fun of. I've been talked to behind my back. I mean, that goes with anywhere in the department. It goes outside of the department. People who've been teaching forever. And, the thing is, I think what's helped is, like I said, I always try and stay as honest as I can about everything. My experience, my training, not everything. Like if I learned something from a conference, I say that. I don't say that I came up with this on my own. I learned it from people who've come before me. My class is a culmination of a bunch of different people who have taught me, and along with things that I've spent time trying to figure out. So, that's helped whenever I've had the naysayers and the bullying or the attitudes, or, I mean, my boss posted that I was going to go teach somewhere one time, and some random guy is like, what does she know? She doesn't know anything. And I don't even know him. And it was nice because I didn't have to say anything. Things like that don't bother me anymore. They used to. You have to have thick skin and know who you are. But it was just nice because people who had taken my class and people who knew me were like, you don't know what you're talking about. If you knew her, you wouldn't say that. You know what I mean? So it's just, it's been an experience. But I will say, going through so many difficulties and judgments definitely has made me stronger for who I am as a person, accepting who I am, being myself unapologetically. There's a lot of judgments and thoughts out there. And for people who don't like me, they're entitled to their opinion. And it's none of my business what they think. So,
Well, it's interesting because I've been thinking recently about some of the, again, Insta-famous personalities, air quotes, that you see on social media. Right. And I've had that thought is that, there's a lot of people out there that don't have very much time on, but it's also all about them. Here's me training again. Here's me forcing a door again. Here's me again, duck walking for the 15th time this month. Right. And what's the difference between what you just talked about and many other people out there that are doing great things that don't have a lot of time on is humility. And it's the same thing as the 30-year, FDNY rescue guy, Al, is humility. Yeah. So, and I've had this. I've gone to the Florida State College and I was working for Reedy Creek, my last department. Oh, do they put wints on your pillows there? And then, 4 or 5 days into it, you're watching them fumble fuck stuff and you're, doing what you're supposed to be doing. And the same at the Orlando Fire Conference when we did VES with Eric Wheaton. And you're going in there and you're snatching dummies out. And it's like, yeah, because you're not defined by the thing. You're defined by who you are. And I think that one of the things that really kills me is like the kind of, the firefighter of the year and all that. There is no competition in the fire service. The only person you're competing with is you. There is no 100%. Best firefighter because that guy might be great with ropes and knots, but absolutely shit with paramedicine. So, like you said, we are a Swiss Army knife and we can't be phenomenal at all the things. So having the humility to understand that if you just focus on yourself and teach when you are, have the ability to teach, and you've found that you have a good grasp of some areas, and then keep learning from other people that are either more well versed in that same thing or well versed in other areas. That's the rising tide lifts all ships. But this ego,
right?
Oh, I'm from this department, dude. You do the same fucking job that everyone else. Let that shit go. Oh, county's better than city. City's better than county. Like, no, you are all doing the same job. The only difference is if you take your training seriously, you take your fitness seriously, your rest and recovery, your ability to cook a decent meal in the firehouse, your ability to shut up and listen sometimes, that is what's going to make you a great firefighter. But, your tenure, for example, is not a linear relationship to being a good firefighter, because there are good examples of people with 25 years on that are shit in the fire service. And there are examples
100%.
of great probies. So humility is everything, every rank, every special ops group, whatever it is. The moment you think you are better than someone else, you've already lost the fight.
Absolutely. And I think you said something that's really important there. Like, I think there's a big difference between seniority and the senior man, right? Like, if you have a good senior man who's been on the job, who's willing to teach, who knows it, his shit inside and out, that's what is important versus the amount of years you have on. Because I've seen a lot of people who have spent no time training, and they have tons of years in the fire service, but what are they doing about it? And there's that balance of like having things outside the fire service, but all in all, when you're doing your job and you've been doing it this long, you should be one of the better people at the job, right? Like, you got 20 years on, you should be the best person on your crew, right? Like, it goes without saying, but that's not always the case, right? And I've learned from so many different people that for me, the egotism and issues in the fire service, really, if we could like set that aside, there's so many things you could just be learning all the time from people, and like becoming a better version of yourself. Like, we care more about what is presented sometimes than the actual content, like who's presenting versus the content, or it's something that I've always been very passionate about. Well, one, because I got given an opportunity early, which was a difficult thing to navigate. Like, everyone's like, oh, you're so fortunate, but also it wasn't like an easy decision to decide to teach early, right? I knew I was going to get shit for it. I knew that I was going to have a hard time. I knew that I was going to be judged. I knew a lot of people were going to talk behind my back, and that's why it's why I think what Mike told me was so important. Like, what's my overall goal? Is it to help people? Okay. Can you do that? Are you going to do that? Okay. Well, then if you're doing things for the right reasons, just don't worry about what people think, and yeah, you can absolutely learn from anyone. I've learned lots of things from brand new guys versus or guys that have, from anyone, so.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think this is the thing. When you see yourself as a fire service personality, then again, you just, you're missing the point. Like, there has been no fire scene. I'll give you a perfect example. There's a story recently came out of these Texas floods where this pararescueman made a bunch of saves, and they interviewed him. And I was looking at this going, that guy is a rock star, but there was a cable, right? And at the top of the cable was another guy and a pilot, and then the mechanics for that and the people, you know what I mean? It's not just a person.
Absolutely.
It's the same with us. I'll never forget being in the Orlando Fire Conference a few years ago, and one of these guys presenting, one of these fire service personalities, basically screamed at us for like an hour or 90 minutes about being into the job. And I remember looking around going, we're at a fucking fire conference. I think everyone here is into the job. Can we move
Everyone's bought in. We're here.
And it's the kind of bullshit. So just like you said, it's not who's talking, it's what's being said. And it might have been way more compelling to have someone with 2 years on in that particular instance that actually was going to bring something new to the table than the same old shit that you've heard from some of these people for like 15, 20 years. So, again, it just circles around to humility. All these people have value. I'm not saying they don't. But the moment that you become a prima donna in the fire service, an organization that's supposed to be selfless, where you're focusing on the people that we serve, then there's a huge disconnect there. And I think this is where I've had so much resistance, because there's a lot of people that are far more bought in with the identity of being a firefighter than actually what it means to be a firefighter.
100%. I mean, I think that's, you know, I think it can fluctuate too. I think, like, you know, because I teach fire academy, and a lot of the kids coming in, they're so excited, right? They're so excited. And, you know, I don't want to steal their joy. I don't want anybody to steal their joy. And then they get onto crews and they get with disgruntled people, and the attitude changes. And, you know, you have people that stay excited for the job, and then you have people that kind of follow in with guys that are kind of burnt out. And you know, it's a fluctuation, and I think that it's not inhuman to change your viewpoints multiple times throughout your career. There's been times where I have not wanted to be here. I was going to quit the fire service a few years ago. I was just over everything. I was really having a hard time, and you know, at that point, I didn't want to train. I didn't want to do a lot of things. And it wasn't because I didn't want to train. It was just because I wasn't in the right mental state. I was having some issues with depression and feeling a purpose and motivation for the job and for any of it. I was drinking a little bit more, on a lot more. On my days off, I basically would like eat ice cream, watch Grey's Anatomy, and make a mimosa at like 10 in the morning. And that was that. I would still do everything. I was functioning, I was teaching, but I was going through a really hard time. And I think that the reason I'm bringing it up, as far as like, there's different stages you go in as a fireman. You might start out gung ho and stay that way for a while, or you might get burnt out. And then that affects all the people around you. It affects yourself. And then trying to find your way back. I don't think it's an uncommon story. So I think a lot of firemen that, you know, are not as excited or don't want to train as much, they may have lost some of their purpose, or lost some of themselves within this job. But, you know, I think there's always a way to come back, and it helps, I think, being in a really good environment. Like my crew, I love my crew. I love my officer. I love, like, I have the greatest crew. I truly do. And it's not just because, I think they're great firemen. It's because of who they are. And having that kind of support has helped me learn to love the fire service again, when there was a time where I just didn't want anything to do with it anymore. You know what I mean? And, yeah, I think there's a lot of guys in the fire service who want to spend more time preaching about the job. But yeah, I mean, I think it's human to go through phases where you're not as excited, but I think it's also really important to try, for the most part. I mean, nobody's perfect, and we all have our days, and we live at the firehouse. So you're not always on, right? Like, you're not always like ready to be that role model, but I think it's important to try and keep the newer people, like, motivated and not steal their joy. And if they want to train, you train. I made a rule a long time ago that if somebody, like a newer person comes up to me and asks me to train, I never say no. Even if I'm tired or I'm not in the mood, I always say yes. And there's been days that I have not wanted to. I'm exhausted. And, you know, it's just finding ways that you can kind of keep thriving in a job that is difficult to always stay at the task at hand and stay motivated, especially with so many difficulties with personalities or administrative issues or crew issues or life issues. It really is hard to stay in that mode all the time. Right. So, I mean.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is going back to the work week. I mean, if you have a more well-rested fire department where they all not only go home when they're supposed to, but they get one extra day between shifts, now you not only have they got rest and recovery, so they're physically able to recover more. Because I mean, if you look at the physiology of sleep deprivation, it causes obesity, hypertension, diabetes, all these things that are breaking our people down. But then even the relationships, the shame and guilt of not being able to go to your kids' function that you promised them to. I mean, that's compounding as well. So I think, this whole kind of revolution that we're starting to see here in Florida, and then you add some fitness standards in too, it's then going to raise the bar, and the motivation level will rise up. but we've also got to stop idolizing the air quotes salty guy and reframe it. Like, no, that's not how we're supposed to be. Being pissed off and rude to the patients is not salty. It's being a dick. And the person going,
Right.
if they
Yeah.
were super nice when they got hired, then let's have this discussion. Obviously, they're going through some things. So let's look at that with compassion and empathy. But we've got to stop revering those people because they're not the ones we should be copying. The Al Benjamins are the ones that we should be copying. But like you said,
Right.
also, understanding that undulation 100%. You're not always going to be the spark plug in the fire station that day. But having your
Right.
finger on the
Yeah.
pulse, maybe if, Jenny has been on the downslope for a while now, maybe we should check in on Jenny. So
Yeah, absolutely.
touching on that then, what was the lowest kind of point that you found yourself? And then what were the tools you used to pull yourself out of that hole?
So a few years ago, I was dating somebody who's another fireman, and I told him that he might come up in this podcast, and he's very aware, and we're friends now. Everything's good. But it was a very unhealthy relationship. Even though we were both gung-ho for the fire service, everyone knew it was an unhealthy relationship. So we ended up being at the same firehouse. We were both on the special ops team, but different shifts, different crews. And we ended up going through a breakup, which was really difficult because, it was dirty. You like going through a breakup while working in the same department, the same firehouse. It was very, very messy. As far as like dealing with things, he ended up going to Shatterproof for a little while to work on some things, but I kind of didn't say anything. I was going through a really difficult time, but there was a lot of attention towards him. But I was really struggling mentally. And on top of it, I wasn't really thriving in the environment I was with at work. It just, things could have been a lot better. I kept trying to push and make things work, and they weren't. And I wasn't happy. And I had a lot going on where, mentally and emotionally, because of this breakup, it was very physically strenuous and not good for my health. And then I had a few bad calls. I had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life besides that. I was having financial issues. I had somebody who came and knocked on my door to help. There was just weird things that were going on, that it was a lot all at once. And I was on the combat challenge team still. I was on the ops team. I was trying to keep everything afloat. I was teaching, and I like broke, and I just wasn't doing well. So I think some people knew, but like, I didn't want to draw attention. I just felt like my personal life and everything should kept separate from work. But also because there was so much attention going on with my ex, I just wanted everything to be, I just wanted to do my job. I just wanted to be left alone. And I just was not okay. I wasn't okay. I was going through just like a few different toxic environments, and I was done. I was severely depressed. I was looking for jobs outside the fire service. I was ready to leave. That's when I broke out into, not too much longer, I broke out into the hives. And basically I just couldn't get out of this funk. I was kind of like, maybe there was a part of me that was feeling like a victim. Like, I had all these things happen to me. It's not my fault that I'm depressed. I'm just kind of stuck. So it actually, I basically got tired. I broke out into hives. I hurt my back doing the combat challenge. My first time doing an individual in Indianapolis, which was super humiliating for me because, one, I teach a class on victim removal, and I messed up on the dummy portion of the combat challenge in front of everyone, and it was broadcasted, and I had hives the whole week before. I was feeling terrible. I hurt my back, and I didn't say anything for a couple weeks. I was in severe pain, and I was just like, that's it. Something's got to change. And I'd already been for years listening to some podcasts I listened to a functional medicine podcast. I started listening to that one during COVID with Dr. Mark Hyman. And so I was listening to things to kind of help try and shift my mind. I got a new therapist. I was diagnosed with ADHD a long time ago, which I now think is kind of more of a symptom of a different root cause, health, lifestyle. But at the time, it was definitely contributing to my issues. And my therapist recommended I go back on my ADHD medication for a short period of time, which there are reasons for medications. And that kind of helped go over the hump of accomplishing things. Like everything felt like a mountain. It felt like if I had to send an email, it was like I was climbing a mountain. Everything felt horrible. And so I went on my medication. I had a good therapist. I always had stayed working out. That was something I do. I'd go work out and then I'd go home and drink. It was just like, somehow I'd stay working out. But I decided things need to change. And one of the podcasts I listened to was actually Mark Hyman. He interviews a lot of people, a lot of medical professionals and different specialists. And he ended up interviewing Dave Asprey. I don't know if you know who he is. He's like a biohacker.
Yes.
But a lot of people are like, oh, he's kind of crazy or he's awesome. There's lots of different views on him. I have a lot of, I kind of extrapolate the things that I really enjoy about what he teaches or tries to go over. But so when he interviewed him, there was a lot of things that I took in and actually changed in my life because of this interview, as far as taking electrolytes in the morning, doing face plunges. But he spent like 5 minutes on part of biohacking is being able to like have a good state of mind, which means that you need to work on the F word, which is forgiveness, right? Learning to forgive people or things in your life that have happened. But not just like, because like, for example, I wanted to forgive things that went on with my ex, and I would say that I had forgiven, but the truth is, I was still triggered and upset when I thought about it. And that's not true forgiveness. And forgiveness more than anything is for yourself, right? And sometimes you need to forgive yourself to be able to move on in life. So like he went over this, it was like 5 minutes of this way to truly forgive someone. And it completely changed my life. I had a whole new perspective on the way that I was going to move, move along going forward. And it made me just appreciate these difficult times I've been through, because I think you truly gain so much in life from your transgressions, from your difficulties, like the trauma you say as a child. So once that was able to process and happen, I started doing a little better. I decided that luckily one of my my girlfriends from college, she called me up and she's like, can we please get the fuck out of town? She's a doctor now, because all my friends from college are doctors because they actually stayed on their path. But she's like, can we go on a surf trip, please? And I was like, yes. And so I decided, I had listened to the podcast. My back was hurt. I decided after I get back we went to Costa Rica, I decided I was going to do 75 hard when I got back from Costa Rica. But before that, I just decided I'm going to be happier, right? Like, I know that sounds kind of stupid to decide to be happier, but like, I truly think the more time you spend deciding to be happy and smiling, eventually your body doesn't know the difference between you faking it and you doing it. And it made a big difference. I decided if I was given a difficult situation, I would just laugh instead of spend time stressing and crying about it. So me and my girlfriend, we took off to Costa Rica. We surfed, we drank tea, we did yoga, we laid on the beach, we journaled, we read books, and it was like the best reset I could have had. And then when I came back, I did 75 hard, which I'm sure you know what that is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
you can tell people listening if they haven't heard it, though.
Okay, so it's 75 days of 2 workouts a day. One has to be outside, 45 minutes each. You drink a gallon of water a day. You have to pick a diet and stick to it. I just chose to not eat inflammatory gluten or dairy, basically, because it causes a lot of inflammation in the body. What else? You have to read 10 pages of a nonfiction book, and you don't drink alcohol. So you do that for 75 days. And that was probably the longest time I'd gone without drinking since I was a kid. And on top of it, like, which I thought I was going to have a hard time doing, but the truth is I had never felt better. And so truly fixing my mental health was taking care of my body. It was a lot of things, right? It was finding people to help me emotionally and mentally, but then also changing my diet, getting some sun. It was when going on the surf trip was me getting back to my passion before the fire service. So when I joined the fire service, I basically quit surfing, which kind of sucks because it's such a, it's so good for the soul. So I went back on this surf trip and it just reignited my love for surfing. I was able to I decided I wasn't going to think about anything work related. I didn't want to talk to anybody about work. I didn't want to think about work. I went with a friend from college. It was like the first trip I had taken in forever that wasn't with a fireman of some sort, like for a fire conference or a training, or it was just to like go. And I came back, I did 75 hard, which was amazing. I decided that I needed to change my environment and, I wasn't thriving at the firehouse I was at. And I had a meeting and asked if I could change where I was at. I just needed to change a pace. And, I said, if that means leaving the special operations team, I'd like to do that. They recommended that I stay on the team, but we have two different firehouses that did special ops. So I changed shifts and firehouses. And that really helped. I just needed a different change of, pace and scenery. Sometimes you've got to change your environment to help change, everything else in your life. And I just needed a big change. I needed everything to be different. And it helped because little by little, I was finally able to start enjoying things about the fire service again, enjoy things of the job. I took a lot more care of myself. I surfed a lot more. I hung out with friends that weren't in the fire service, and it just really reiterated the importance to me of like the fire service is super important, and you need to train, and you need to be good at your job, and I think you shouldn't do this job without being all in, but at the same time, you definitely need that balance. You need the things where if work isn't going well, if the fire service isn't going well, you need something that you can rely on and depend on, because if not, it is where I was left, where I felt like I had nothing. I didn't have anything, to show in my life. I had put all my eggs in this one basket. And when it wasn't working out at the time, I didn't know what to do with myself. And I've had to learn to say no to a lot more things, right? That was part of me doing better. I quit the combat challenge team, which yes, is a fitness thing, but it was very time consuming. It was very tough on the body. I have to work I teach fire academy. I work for on-scene training, and I do work out all the time. I had to start saying no to things that were taking up a bunch of time in my life, where I needed to focus on my mental health, my rest, my relationships. So that's what I did. And it made all the difference in the world. And then because of making all these changes, it catapulted me into want to get my health coach certification, which I've been doing for the past year. And I'm just finishing that up right now. So, which has really given me a lot of tools and lectures that have just really expanded my mind so much. It's a lot of holistic stuff, but I love the science behind holistic and wellness treatments versus just medications, because there's so much science behind it, and everyone's like, oh, this is just woo-woo weird shit. But really, like, there's so much science behind different breathing techniques for reducing anxiety, the different nutrients you can get from your food, getting proper sunlight, doing ice plunges, and all the things in the way it affects your nervous system, your inflammation. It's like super important. So it kind of just led me towards that. So, yeah.
It's funny when you were talking about, your reset really was a surf trip, and then you go back to your husband at the time slap you on the shoulder because they'd met this person that had all this time to surf.
Yeah.
There is the facade of the fire service from the outside looking in. Oh, the best job in the world, and not to dive into the whole work week thing yet again, but And then you have the identity piece. You go all in and you become just a firefighter, and this is a danger. You get hurt, you retire, whatever the thing is, and that's all you've been, because that was like, now I'm tough, I'm strong, I'm a protector, I'm whatever, I'm valuable in society. And then it's stripped from you. And it's like, well, who the hell am I then? But you were always that same person. This is what I tell people. You had a heart to serve. This is the yin and the yang of the first responder. It was kindness and compassion, if you were doing the job for the right reasons, that sent you into uniform. And then we become this white circle, all hard. And then we come out the other end, like, a fire version of RoboCop, and then wonder why we fall apart. Because you forgot that you were a human being that does the job of firefighting, that does the job of being a paramedic. That's not who you are. Who you are is a person that wants to make the world a little bit better. So as you transition out or you hit pause, you're reminded like, oh, no, the mission is exactly the same. This is just a uniform that I wear at this time, and I love what I do. But when this goes away, I'm still going to want to make the world better. And this is what I found with this, the podcast and then the books and now the TV show I'm developing. The potential number of lives that I'm planning with this next project could be in the millions, whereas I can only respond to one incident at a time in the back of a rig. So it's a force multiplier thing. So same exact mission, different uniform.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of me getting my health coach certification is wanting to bring more awareness and health to people around me. In ways that you can improve in it without having to spend a lot of money, or you don't necessarily need a gym or whatever. Like, it's just wanting to be able to improve health and find ways, because like once you start feeling good and you realize you can get out of that hole that you dug yourself into, you want other people to be able to experience that and know that there is a way out. I honestly think every fireman should have a therapist. I think it's just a matter of time. It's not when, it's or not if, it's when you're going to need that extra mental support for whatever's going on, whether it's home life or calls, or just the culmination of all of it mixed in with the health. And I couldn't agree more that there's lots of ways to make a huge impact on people. You with your podcast and being able to share different stories and change people's lives. I mean, I listened to a podcast that changed my life. There was like a 5-minute portion, and it changed the whole trajectory of my life just by listening to that one part. So I 100% agree. Yeah. I think that with working on my health coach certification, it was really funny because, not funny, but ironic. I ended up going through a weird health issue out of nowhere that started last August. I became like allergic out of nowhere to like different fruits like mango, strawberry, banana, and pineapple, like turning red, throat closing, like out of nowhere. And I went to go see all these doctors, and my blood work would come back normal, and I would get this lump that started growing on the side of I had pictures of it all. I went to an endocrinologist, and he's like, Jenny, if you didn't have these pictures, no one would believe you. And I'm like, I know, I don't know what's going on. And I had to start carrying around an EpiPen, and no one could figure out what was going on. And I'm in the middle of my health coach certification, and everyone, I have been prone to weird illnesses and weird things since I was younger. I've had meningitis, I've had osteomyelitis, I've been in the hospital multiple times for hypokalemia. Like, I just have like strange things that don't happen to everyone else. And I'm sure there's somewhere in there, it's the culmination of traumas and issues that have caused issues with my immune system and my health. And I'm sure the stress response from what I went through before is showing up in my body later. And it's interesting, the science behind trauma actually causing staying in your fascia. Cortisol will get stuck in your tissues. You actually have to release it. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon. But so I ended up having to figure out ways to work on my health, and I ended up seeing a functional medicine doctor, and I did all these supplements. And long story short, it basically was a very strange time to go through while I'm trying to get my health coach certification. I have a weird undiagnosed illness, and having to navigate that. And that's one of the things that I eventually want to help people through, is being able to listen to their bodies, knowing you're not crazy if something's going on, finding ways to overcome it. And a lot of the times it really just has to do with, I don't think anything will get better in your life until you can be mentally well and you can start working on your happiness. And I truly believe in that. So anyway, that's just another random thing.
So well, for people listening, if they want to, reach out to you, follow you, or even be able to see when you start doing the health coaching as well, where are the best places online to do that?
I guess right now, Instagram is probably the easiest to reach me. Or, you can send an email, but Instagram is a little easier. Or Facebook. My Instagram is firechick880. It was something I picked a long time ago and it just stuck. You can email me. My email is jenny.grima@gmail.com. A lot of people usually try and reach out on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram. I do plan on, I'm in the middle of studying for the lieutenant's test, which is, it's finished with in October. So after that, I wanted to focus a little bit more on the health coach side and being able to work with people who were interested. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I want to thank you so much. It's been such an amazing conversation, yet another unique perspective, especially like you said, entering the world of instruction with, a couple of years in the fire service specifically, but that's not negating all the teaching you did before as well. And then the physical fitness side as well. So I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Absolutely. It's an honor. I really appreciate it.